All right, we are going to get started. We are back. I know I took a little bit of time off, but we are back. I'm very excited for talk number 4 of the More Than an Admin series. For those who might never come to a talk or know me, my name is Mallory. I'm an administrative business partner in search ads here at Google and also the founder of More Than an Admin. I always like to say thank you for joining in today. You could be anywhere in the world, but you are here with us. And also for your patience, because like I said, I've been off a couple months. I ended up moving cross country, had to figure out my life for a little bit and put anything urgent to the side. But now that I'm back, I'm really excited to continue this talk series, especially with our featured guest today. A little logistics before we start. One, I want to welcome some external guests. Pauleanna is a huge mentor, which we might get into later a little bit. And I wanted to allow her a few slots of people that she has mentored or people in her network. So if you see some people in the chat, you're like, who are these people that are also on the GVC? That's who they are. They're Pauleanna's guests. Just a reminder that this is going to be recorded. I have allowed Pauleanna to use just the portion that we speak, not the open Q&A for her YouTube channel. So just keep that in mind as well. And then we have a Dory, as always, at go/Pauleanna Reed. So if you want to ask your questions there, put them in the Dory, and we'll get to them a little bit later, as always. And if you want to learn more about the talk series, see upcoming guests, because we have another great guest next month, please go to go/morethananadmin. So today, we're joined by Pauleanna Reed, who is a celebrity ghostwriter, journalist, and former executive assistant. But honestly, I only included those couple of titles because she has a bazillion other titles. Author, founder of a scholarship. I mean, literally, I was like, what doesn't Pauleanna do when I was reading her bio? And I'm really excited that she chose to be here with us today. And as always, I love to share, how the heck do I meet these speakers? Because that's the #1 question I usually get once I post who the next speaker is. So we connected because I, as I have told a lot of other admins, was addicted to Clubhouse for a couple of months. And my friend Sean had a room welcoming Beyonce's dad, Matthew Knowles, to Clubhouse. And I happened to join. And I had no idea that Pauleanna was in the room. I didn't even, honestly know of her before us connecting. But again, you never know who's in the room with you. And I think that's like so amazing about what I loved about the app Clubhouse. And so I got to ask the final question to Matthew. And I don't remember the exact question, but it was something along the lines of like, what do you look for when you hire someone like an assistant or someone close to you? And Pauleanna, DM'd me on Instagram, and I'm very happy that I knew about like the other section of people that you don't follow. So I didn't become like T-Pain and forget that, never see that message. But she had messaged me, and I don't know if you can read it because it's a little bit blurry, but it says, "Hey Mal, excellent question for Matthew. I was an EA for 10 years before leaping into full-time entrepreneurship. I absolutely love my job, and it in many ways prepared me to see the world and people differently." It's something that I always talk to different admins about is everyone has their own path. Some people are meant to be a career admin forever. Some people right now have no idea. Maybe do they want to be a career admin? Maybe do they not? And then some people know that they don't want to be a career admin. And for those that maybe know that they don't want to be a career admin, or maybe they don't know what they want in the future, I really thought Pauleanna was a great person to bring in, considering that she transitioned not just from like an EA to a program manager, an analyst role, but she actually went full-time entrepreneur, which I think is really amazing. And wanted to hear more about her story myself, and hopefully all of you find some value in it. So I want to welcome Pauleanna to Google. And since I'm in New York City right now, I figured that this would be the scene potentially of where we would be in this tech talk space in New York. I'm really excited to have you and to have this conversation, and welcome.
I'm so happy to be here.
Let me take this presentation down and then we will get rolling. So the first question that I always love to ask people is about their roots. If you listen to a lot of my talks for the More Than an Admin series, many admins will say it's always my first question, because I think that knowing someone's roots really explain a lot of why people show up the way that they do. So I wanted to know if you could share a little bit about something about your roots that maybe influence how you show up as the person that you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to engage in this conversation. As Mal said, my name is Pauleanna Reed. I'm proud to come from a two-parent Caribbean household. I am the oldest of three children, and growing up, our dinner conversations didn't always, no, never consisted of dreaming big, right? We were encouraged to color within the lines, stay within them, and play it safe. But I have always been a creative thinker. I've always been curious. I've always been imaginative. So throughout my childhood, I wrestled with that a lot, right? Going against the grain, going against the status quo. I remember, as soon as I could hold a pen, I would never let it go. I've always been someone who was a doodler, I love to journal. And for me, being alone with my thoughts and being a creative kid, oftentimes I was misunderstood. I remember my father, sitting down at the breakfast table and telling me to read him the newspaper so that I could report to him what happened that day. And so it's crazy that, when I look back on my life and connect all the dots, today I am a journalist. I'm currently a senior contributor at Forbes and Business Insider. Outside of that, I think what people would be surprised to know about me is that I was a competitive swimmer for nearly a decade. Most days, I'm probably 4 out of 5 days, I was up at 4 a.m. in the pool by 5 a.m. before school. I may not come from a family that had big, wild dreams and wild ambitions, but I come from a family of very, very hard workers. I come from a family that is highly competitive. In our family, we don't celebrate participant ribbons. You are not getting an applause for making 5th place. And so, I'm not going to say that it's the right or wrong parenting style, but having that edge has definitely worked to my benefit later in my career.
That is like everything you said. I'm like, wow, I feel as though I was in the same household as you. I was definitely not a competitive swimmer. I can say that. But I was also never taught to really dream super, super big. My grandmother used to be like, you're going to be the president one day. I don't know why that she was
love that.
One of the people that always told me that. I'm like, I never want to be the president, but the rest of my family was very much like, work hard and you can do something really great. But when I remember when I first left my first company, they're like, and I didn't have a job lined up. They're like, what do you mean? You're going to like let go of this stability and you have like an income to go after like your dreams or whatever else you want to do. They're like, you can't do that. Because they had always, I feel as though, been coloring within the lines as well. I love that you share a little bit about your roots there. And now I didn't even know that you swam at all. So I'm like very interested. And we're gonna have to text about that if you still even swim. But before becoming, I feel as though a mogul now of doing so many different things, of ghostwriting, being journalist, a founder. You were an EA for 10 years for different companies. And I'm curious to know what first led you to becoming an EA to begin with. Can you share a little bit about your journey, and did you plan to be a career admin, or were you always kind of your heart set on being maybe something else?
No, I had no idea I was going to be an EA. I was a kid that was mediocre at best in school. I failed many of my grades, but I had my notebook and I had my pen, and like I said, I was a very colorful thinker, and so I wanted to pursue a creative path. I wanted to pursue communications or journalism, but every adult in my life told me that that was not an option for me because I failed English twice. So they said, your report card doesn't even reflect the wild ass dreams that you have. So why would you even think that you can be a writer? How are you going to make money from being a writer? And honestly, it led to mental health issues. I think when we're younger, we're taught that we can be anything and everything we want to be. And then we enter high school and we're told that we now need to be realistic. And that really messed with me. And so I entered a college program that was selected for me, and I spiraled into depression and anxiety. I tried to commit suicide twice, not at the idea that I was going to pursue an administrative field, but it was more so around the idea that I was being put in a corner, told to shut up and to play it safe, right? Like, here's your desk job, and that's all you're probably going to be in life. And so I had a lid on my dreams, and it was very, very frustrating for me. So I ended up dropping out of school my second year. And that being said, I was later diagnosed in 2010 with depression and severe anxiety. And around that same time is when I started my career in the corporate world. I started as a receptionist, and then I climbed my way up. I should probably backtrack and say that I went to college for office administration, and I ended up dropping out my second year, final semester of my second year. And so I started off as a receptionist, climbed my way up the ladder, became an executive assistant, a few years later. I have supported C-suite executives, senior leadership across various industries. And I didn't really understand how my job fit into the bigger picture, right? I was kind of just going into the office day to day. This is early in my career. It really didn't hit me of how significant and the importance of my role was until I would say halfway, maybe like the 4 or 5 year mark. And so I feel like early in your career, oftentimes you are made to feel insignificant. You are made to feel small. You are made to feel as if your contribution doesn't really matter. You're just an assistant. And so that really messed with me. And when I started supporting a leader, her name is Nancy Figgenshaw, she actually helped, she played an integral role in my development, in the way I saw myself and my confidence. And I do think that, the leaders who are very self-aware and who are very emotionally intelligent, they also pay attention to who's supporting them and what drives them, right? Because we are all driven by different things at different stages of our life. And so Nancy was that person for me. And from there, the sky was the limit.
That's awesome. So how did you kind of learn how to leverage this role once maybe you realized how important it was? Because I feel as though in my career, if there's anything that I've done, I've taken the most out of being an admin. People ask me all the time, Mal, why didn't you become a program manager? Why didn't you go to this? I've been offered different roles at Google, and I'm like, no, I want to be an admin because I've learned really how to leverage it, and I really enjoy certain aspects. So I'm curious to know, like, how did you leverage being an admin for your, building kind of your own empire? Because I know that at some point you started to bring in money beyond being an admin, and you started to build kind of your career outside of it. So how did you start doing that?
Yeah, so I think at first, it's all about baby steps, right? I think from the jump, I had a set of non-negotiables. I've always had a life outside of my work. It was always very important to me. I always engaged in sports teams and clubs, and I had side hustles and I took classes. It was very important to me that my identity was not tied to my title. I think society is obsessed with accomplishment and titles, and I think it's extremely important to know and understand who you are beyond them. I have seen way too many times several senior level executives who have contributed 20, 30 years to an organization and either get laid off or they decide to part ways and they have no idea who the hell they are. And I never wanted that to be me. And so whenever I would go into the interview process, I always made it very clear that even though this job and this company is a top priority, in order for me to show up as my best self, it's going to require me to have a life outside of work. So I think that non-negotiable was not up for discussion. And I believe every woman should have a set of principles that does not bend. So that's the first thing. The second thing was, oftentimes in our role, there are a few different hats, right? On one hand, sometimes we are observers and we're quiet. You don't even know we're in the room. On the other hand, you have to know when to tap into that strength and raise your voice and speak up and take up space. And so getting back to your question, I leveraged my skills by taking up space, right? Over time, and I think that's a muscle that has to be built. So I want to tell a quick story to illustrate how I did that. So in 2017, I got an itch, right? I think assistants are master communicators, whether written, verbal, body language. Sometimes we walk into the room and the whole room is intimidated, right? Like we command attention. And so I had an itch. I wanted to go into another role. I was interested in learning more about the internal communications team. So I had coffee with the head of the department, and she was very impressed by my writing background. At this time, I was already a nationally published journalist for 7 years. I was already an author. I had just started a senior contributor position at Forbes, and I had just started my ghostwriting career. So, I mean, it was a natural fit. She told me that even though she was impressed with my background, that I was not qualified because I didn't have a degree.
Wow.
And we can put a pin in that, because that's another conversation that I don't think a lot of people are ready for. Because you know what? I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with EAs who were reduced to their role and blocked from pursuing bigger dreams or other roles within the company. Right. I mean, I just had a conversation with a peer over at Deloitte, and I mean, she's been blocked for years, right? Like every time that she's applied, every time she's raised her hand, it's been quite challenging. And so I thought that this was ludicrous. I thought this was crazy, because given my background, to be quite honest, I was running circles around anyone in that department. And so oddly enough, the president of the company, she started an initiative called Office Hours around the same time. And Office Hours was the opportunity for any employee at any level to book 15 minutes with her on her calendar. She opened up a half-day block once a quarter. And I thought this was brilliant, right? Because it definitely opened the lines of communication. And so, I looked to my left, I looked to my right. None of the other EAs they were raising their hands. I mean, we knew her because we supported her, but not on a personal level. You can talk to her about anything that you wanted. So I had the audacity to bypass the comms team, to bypass the PR team. And I sat in her office, I booked time, I sat in her office, and I told her in detail, I told her more about my writing background. And she was very intrigued. And then, you know what I did? I told her that I wanted to be her ghostwriter. I recognized that I could add a lot more value than I had already been bringing to the table. And so she was open to it. She connected me to her PR team. And shortly thereafter, I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks after, she actually was on stage at a college giving a commencement speech that I wrote. And what made it even more special in that defining moment was the fact that she also earned her honorary doctorate. And so honestly, that moment was a defining moment in my career because it confirmed what I already knew. And the other thing is, like, I really hope that story also inspires those watching that, don't be intimidated by titles. Right? Our job is to fulfill and to solve problems, complex problems. And so even though I was I was content at my job, I loved my job as an EA, I knew that I could do more. Right? And so I kind of planted a seed. And honestly, that was like the start of my ghostwriting career.
That's awesome. I think, like, what I always tell people is everyone has a different path. If you want to stay in EA forever and you find it super fulfilling, that's amazing. That's great. There's some people at the company who I know, even like you were saying, I also know people at Google that have either been blocked or don't go up for certain things because they don't know how maybe they will be perceived, not only by the executives, but by the own admin community, of feeling like a sellout or becoming a program manager. Well, why isn't being an EA enough? And I would say everyone has their different path. Everyone wants something completely different. There's some people find fulfillment in, I don't know, being a dentist. To me, I would never find fulfillment out of that. Even though my stepdad's a dentist, he loves it. I don't know why, but that's his thing. And I always tell people everyone has a different path. And I love that you kind of carved your own path. And like you said, you didn't allow anyone to kind of stop you. You're very resilient. You're a hustler. You're a risk taker. I'm curious to know where that kind of risk taking, that hustler mentality kind of comes from, because that's something that I feel as though we relate with. I take a ton of risks. Even with this talk series that I started it. I didn't really ask for approval. I just
and I love that.
And I was like, it might fail and I might get in trouble, but okay, I'm taking a risk. And so I'm curious to know where that stems from for you.
It stems from a few different areas, right? Like, I see the world through a very different lens. My landscape, my playing field looks different than some people, because not only am I a woman, I'm a Black woman who dropped out of college, and I live with a mental illness. So for me, like, I know that I have to work harder, smarter. I have to be very aware of the players on the field, their role and their function. I have to take calculated risks. I don't think it's just about taking risks. I think you have to be quite calculated. And for me, I just know that success does not arise from playing it safe. I'm really obsessed with, and I love reading biographies and watching documentaries. And if you look at anyone entertainers, C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, everyone, starts at zero, and every great artist was once an amateur. And so for me, it's just really like, it's all about perspective, right? Like there's nothing that I can't do. There's nothing that I can't attain. And every single time I've been discriminated against, every single time someone has tried to put me in a corner, every single time, someone reduced me to just being an assistant, it made me fight a lot harder. It made me tap into and find my voice, because I'm more than an admin, right? Like I have value. And so I think that sometimes in the corporate world, they can condition us to think that we're just a number. No, I'm Pauleanna. I'm Pauleanna Reed. I'm a millennial woman who has fought for her dreams and won. Like, and no one can take that from me. So honestly, I think risk taking is a muscle that has to be built over time, right? So you start small, and then like as you grow more, as you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're able to raise your hand and speak up in meetings and challenge your boss, hold him accountable. And I was that person at the last, towards the end of my career, at the last few organizations that I was at.
I love that. So you went from, being an EA to becoming a full-time entrepreneur, and that's a huge risk.
Mm-hmm.
And having to, get rid of that safety net. And I've talked to many admins at Google who have side hustles of some sort, including myself. And people are, either scared of taking the risk, or they just don't know how. And what kind of like advice do you have for someone that might be, loving kind of like what we call them the golden handcuffs and having a safety net? And how did you make the final decision to leave your EA job and go a full-time entrepreneur? And any advice you have for some people that might be kind of wrestling with it?
This is my favorite topic ever. So I'm so glad that you asked this. I think that what I want to say first is that it's okay to be a side hustler. Not everyone has to jump ship and be a full-time entrepreneur. The way these corporate salaries are, girl, to be quite honest, depending on where you're from. I'm born and raised in Toronto, Canada. Yes. And some of us don't have rich daddies. Some of us, the government safety net is not quite there. So, some of us are actually forced to pursue projects that earn us extra income, right? So no matter what angle you're coming from or why you are trying to earn extra money, first of all, it's none of anyone's business. But at the same time, it's like, just do you. The second thing I'll say, so there's a few things that I did to help really position myself and prepare myself mentally, and helped further my development so that I could take that leap of faith. The first thing I did was I changed my money mindset. Right. I don't even know if I should tell this story, but yeah. So first thing I did was I changed my money mindset, and I adapted the theory that listen, a job may determine your salary, but you determine your total income, right? The number on that job letter is what the company can afford. It does not equate to your true value. That is first and foremost is one thing I want to get out of the way, because they will hand you a contract of $65K and make you. I remember this is what I wanted to say that I was hesitating, because I remember my boss, he handed me a job letter, had $65K on it, and he was so happy. And he was, he was patting himself on the back, and I'm like, sir, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I just don't think that, anyways, I will put a pin on that, because there's a lot I can say around how we're treated and how we contribute to the organization and whether or not we're compensated, in the right way. The second thing I'll say is assessing your environment, right? So I entered the last 3 jobs at my salary ceiling. Right? I think it's really about priorities. It wasn't about the money for me. That's why I could take the $65K and not really be upset, because it wasn't about the money. I also wanted a millennial driven culture. I also wanted unlimited PTO. I wanted an environment that was open to new ideas and a difference of opinion. I wanted an environment that prioritized mental health and made it the heart of their existence. I wanted mentorship opportunities. There are so many things on my checklist, on my to-do list, that were more important over the money. Because listen, I'm resourceful, I'm marketable, I'm cute, I'm smart. I will make money. I know how to make money. It's the other things that oftentimes corporations forget that was really important to me. So I was okay at going in on my salary. The other thing I'll say is to ask a lot of questions. I made sure that I scheduled informational interviews with the heads of each department, right? And a few times a year, because when you are an entrepreneur, you wear every single hat. You are the janitor, you are the salesperson, you are the CEO, you are the marketing team. And so I really wanted to learn their role and their function. I also got uncomfortable, like I would raise my hand to sit in strategy meetings, 2, 3, 4 hour strategy meetings and take minutes. Mind you, I wasn't that great at taking minutes. I will say it's like the worst thing. Like I cannot, but it wasn't about the minutes. It wasn't about taking notes. It was all about, I wanted to sit in these rooms and I wanted to learn how the senior leadership team solved problems. I wanted to learn how they took client calls. I wanted to learn what kind of persuasive language did they use to convince clients to make a decision. Another thing, and I wrote down a few notes because I want to make sure I didn't miss anything pertaining to the transition, is to question things that you're taught and not take things at face value. And this is what I mean by that. We all know that some executives at these companies, right? We know that they don't even know how they got there. We know that this corporate culture is a bromance. You feel me? So I've been in strategy meetings and I was like, and remember, I'm seeing the world through another lens because I'm a Black woman and one who has found their voice. I will always call shit out that doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Like I operate with integrity. I'm one of very few people that probably do. And so for me, I've been in rooms where literally the leaders sitting in front of me are about to commit cultural appropriation, who are about to commit and I always raise my hand and I question everything that I'm taught and never take things at face value. I hold leaders accountable when they say they're going to do something. And so that helps me build that muscle, because now as an entrepreneur, when I'm in meetings or when I'm talking to client partners or talking to, my peers and colleagues, it's helped me find my voice and it's helped me develop a foundation to stand on. It helped me become more self-aware of the things that were important to me. Identify what you don't know as soon as possible. So fill the knowledge gap, right? So that could be anything from marketing to the sales reports, even though it may not be a part of your role as an EA to deal with those types of things. If you're making the transition, you want to be aware. So ask questions. And then I want to also say, leave on good terms, right? Leave on good terms and don't make the company question your loyalty. I was in the office every single day at 6 a.m. There's not a single boss that I've had that cannot co-sign that. And either I was using that extra time because I was working on a keynote presentation I was giving, or a guest lecture, or I was working on, something pertaining to my business, or I was trying to get ahead. But I made sure that I crossed my T's, I dotted my I's, and the company never questioned my loyalty. I was able to leave on good terms. They even threw me a hurrah. They threw me a party. And then the last two things I'll say really quickly is I paid off as much debt as possible. And because I didn't want to have to worry about that when I made my transition. And the day I quit, I could look back a year from then and I had a consistent track record of sales, right? So again, I worked on my side hustle muscle, and I made sure that I had a consistent track record of sales. That was really important. When I left January, February 2019. The entire year prior, 2018, I had made $147,000 from my side hustle. So at that point, I was like, okay, I can do this. I can move on.
Yeah. So it's what I love.
I was very long-winded, but I had to get that out. So thank you for your patience.
I think there's a couple. There's so many things I want to respond with, but I'm like, I cannot say everything. The thing I think is really good is leaving. I think that a lot of and let's take this, it doesn't even need to be you're leaving and to become a full-time entrepreneur. It could be you're leaving just to go to another team as an admin. I get a lot of questions asked about that. Is you can leave on good terms, and you often find out who really has your back and who's really someone that you want to keep in your life when you leave, and you're going to pursue something that you think is better for your career. I remember when I left, now I'm back in search ads, but at the time I was going from search ads to people development. And when I told my manager, I was very nervous because I had a great relationship with him. He was he literally was trying to strategize with me. Is this actually the right career move for you? Do you want to become a program manager? Do you want to become something else? Is that why you're leaving? He really wanted to make sure that I was setting myself up for success. And he and I still have a great relationship, and he
Good.
wants to be even over, because it's like you learn when you go after something that you think is better for you, who's actually in your corner versus who just liked you when you were giving them something. So I love that you said that, because I think it is, you can leave on good terms with someone.
Absolutely. And honestly, I'm like, the door is open. I am welcome to return if I'd like to. And so, you know, who knows what the future holds, but the door is open, and I'm really happy that, you know, that bridge is still intact.
Is there anything that you actually miss about being an EA or working for someone else? Because obviously, you know, I feel as though that it could be really, what's the word? Like, it could seem like it's like a dream to become an entrepreneur. But I think all of us who are pursuing things entrepreneurial know that it's not always, you know, rainbows and butterflies. It's very hard. I'm curious to know, what do you miss about being an EA or working for someone else?
So one thing that I really admired about being an EA, one thing I loved, it helped me build my problem solving muscles. Like, I'm sure everyone on this call has the wildest stories of some shit their boss made them do that you did not think you were going to be able to tackle, right? And so for me, it helped me build that muscle, and that helped me build confidence, right? I remember, you know, I've done everything from, obviously, you know, being executive assistant to personal assisting. I had my boss call me one day. He was taking his 7-year-old son to a basketball game the next day, and he's like, "Yeah, and I want his name on the jumbotron." And I want his name on the jumbotron saying happy birthday. And I was like, who are you, the king? Like, what do you think this is? Because not only do you have to like book that a week in advance, but like who do you think you are? Like, and he didn't, like, I got the job done. You know how I got the job done? I got it done because I had to call an ex-boyfriend who's a sports anchor, and I had to call him a favor, and I had to open up that trauma wound. But you know what? The job, and we laugh about it, but like I had to swallow my pride and call in a favor. But my boss was happy. I wasn't going to let his 7-year-old son down. So like for me, those moments are like when I was challenged and tested, and I didn't know how I was going to make this miracle happen. Those moments have followed me into entrepreneurship, but I loved strategizing with my other colleagues. I really loved, brainstorming the impossible. I loved the sense of accomplishment every time I was given a task and able to tackle it. And, there are some times where honestly, I was in tears at my desk because it was like, it was very tough some moments, right? Because I've also had a lot of, monster bosses in my day. But for me, one of the mantras, one of the affirmations that I always whispered to myself is that I trust myself to figure it out. I trust myself to figure it out. And somehow I did.
Yeah, I know. I have a lot of crazy stories. Actually, luckily not from Google as much as I have from my first job. Especially when I used to travel the world, I had to direct a lot of private flights that I was like, why am I directing this private flight? But I was the only one up because, when we were in Europe or something, everyone from our office in the US was sleeping. So I have a lot of stories there. And I think, for what I love and what I will, if, one day I leave, which no secret that one day I will, I love the community, because I feel as though that when you're going through, trying to do the impossible, the people around you, more likely than not, at least at Google that I have found.
The thing is, if you are blessed with people around you who feel a sense of community, because I've also been in environments where my fellow assistant colleagues were bullies, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't always rainbows and sunshines. If you're blessed to have a great community like the one you describe at Google, like consider yourself very fortunate, because it's not like that everywhere.
Yes, my first company was not like that, but here I feel as though, for myself at least, right? Someone in the audience might be like, I have a bad community, but I feel as though in general, there's so many avenues. We have over, I think, 1,900 now or around there that you can find. And this is why I kind of wanted to start this, was like to build a community of really supportive people, so that you can lean on. So switching gears a little bit is, I guess kind of on the same topic of being, being an EA and being an entrepreneur, both can be very stressful, not easy jobs.
Right.
We both share a past filled with mental health struggles. You've been open about yours. I've always been open about mine on different platforms. And now we've become kind of mental health advocates and doing our best to really showcase, how do you turn pain into purpose and help other people? And something that I've kind of been wrestling with lately, and I don't know if you ever do, is how do you continue to make sure that your mental and physical health are taken care of? And, you know, how do you bounce back after maybe being triggered by something, or having a bad mental health day? How do you, like, do you have any systems in place? How do you make sure that your mental health is still on check so that, you know, you can do these interviews with me and the same with me?
So the first thing I'll say is when I was an executive assistant, I mean, my mental health was definitely all over the place. I was stressed a lot of the time. I loved my job, but I was stressed a lot of the time. And one thing that triggered me was, you know, the company had a company-wide meeting, had this initiative, a mental health initiative, and they're making this big donation. There's a panel. And because I work closely with the senior leadership team, I knew they didn't give a shit about mental health. I was like, this is a spectacle. They're performing. And one thing that was really important to me when I was in that role is to hold senior leaders accountable for their shit, right? Because we're leading this mental health initiative. Meanwhile, the environment we've created is literally crippling people. So tell me how that works.
Mm-hmm.
You feel me? So I sent an email. As soon as I got to my desk, I sent an email to the senior leaders and I told them, as someone who lives with depression and anxiety, I'm watching you. You know what I mean? Like, this is not going to be something where we just check a box, right? I really need you guys to give a shit about people who are fighting their own private battles behind closed doors. That was really important to me. So for me, honestly, like, you said, like, to answer your question, it's really just speaking up for people who can't speak up for themselves. Like, that's really important to me. There's a lot of people cannot find their voice. Some people can't even get out of bed on a daily basis. And so if I can find those pockets and those moments where I can advocate and I can raise my hands and I can call someone out on their shit or educate them, right? Because it was also a learning moment for the senior leadership team, right? Because I'm literally killing it day to day. They don't know that I live with depression. They don't know that I'm crippled in a ball sometimes before I go to sleep, crying my eyes out, right? So, you know, it was also a learning moment for all of us. And so I think it's really important as advocates to do so. And then, like, honestly, everyone's formula is very, very different. For me, I attend individual therapy, group therapy, lifestyle changes, diet changes. I work out. Yeah, I've been on medication. My formula is going to look very, very different than yours. And so I think it's really important that we raise our hands, number one, when something is going on, finding a tribe or community that you feel close to and that you're a part of. And honestly, normalize speaking to medical professionals because that's why they're there, right? And so I think that's really important. Like, you know, there's so many of us suffering in silence. But if you just tell one person, it could really be the biggest difference and change for you and sometimes save your life.
Yes, I love that. So when I was going to therapy pretty regularly, on my work calendar, I actually had it public. I made sure it was public and I said, like, yay for good mental health. And I have, like, therapy. And I had actually a few people, like, message me and be like, I can't believe you had that, like, publicly. Like, that's very interesting. Like, because I want to normalize it, that it shouldn't be a weird thing to say that you go to therapy. It's not.
Or take a mental health day.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, in order for me to go super hard at work sometimes, I have to make sure that my mental health, especially in physical health, are being taken care of in however way my personalized plan is. And so I love that you kind of have your own approach to it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm a big believer that, you know, everyone has a short story worth sharing, whether they want to do that through nonfiction, fiction, whether they want to share it publicly, privately, and everyone has the ability to be an author. Not maybe everyone chooses to be so, but I know that you have chosen to be an author and you published kind of several books yourself and have ghostwritten for other people. So I'm curious to know, like, what have you learned through publishing your own book, through publishing other people's book, kind of the process of publishing a book? You know, you hear so many people say, like, wow, you published a book, it's in society, such a big accomplishment. Have you learned anything about yourself through kind of the writing process and publishing process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to clarify because I don't even know if like everyone knows what a ghostwriter is. So I run a celebrity ghostwriting agency, and we help the world's leaders and doers who are shaping the future turn their personal stories into brand assets. So we specialize in penning books and keynote speeches, celebrities, politicians, athletes, executives, entrepreneurs, founders, and in every single interview I've had, every sit down, honestly, like before the marketing plans and the lights and the speaking engagements, people just want to be heard. You know, it's almost like it's a breath of fresh air for them to work through this process of telling someone their entire story and having it documented. Some of the leaders that I've ghostwritten for, they want to leave a legacy. If something were to happen to them, they want their children to know, you know, how they arrived where they are. People write stories for different reasons, but whether you're writing a story or writing down memories in your journal, or whether you plan to publish it publicly, I think that everyone should know that their story like has meaning. It's very significant, and it's also very therapeutic, right? I'm spending months with individuals, asking them questions, like I'm a vault, I'm a confidant, I'm listening to them, and you know, I can just see a sense of relief. You know, I'm no therapist, right? I'm literally just listening. And I think that's a lesson that we can all take with us, is like some people just need an ear. They don't need you to preach at them. They don't need you to judge them. They don't need you to, you know, just shut up and listen sometimes. And honestly, like going back to our mental health conversation, that can be the biggest difference for someone, because a lot of people out here feel misunderstood, you know? So honestly, that has been the biggest takeaway for me.
Has it been hard to be a ghostwriter and like not be able to share a lot of times like what maybe speeches or books or whatever else that you've written? Because I know that like for some people that maybe don't know, like my best friend does some ghostwriting, copy editing and stuff. And she's worked with a lot of people that she's always like, Mal, you see that? Like I wrote that. And I'm always like, man, I wish you could like share that. But I'm curious to know with you is like, is it hard to like not be able to share certain things like that?
It's not about that. So here's what I want people to understand. There's a difference between your job and your life assignment, right? And if we talk about purpose-driven work, like for me, my purpose is not in my title. My purpose is not public speaking, volunteering, mentoring, my work as a journalist, a ghostwriter. No, my purpose is the common thread in everything I do is I help people see beyond the limits of their circumstances. Right? That is my purpose. And so I use these things, these titles, as vessels to exercise my purpose, right? So when we speak to our life assignment, my life assignment is really literally to be a vessel and help them birth this message, help them navigate certain sensitivities, help them amplify their voice, like whatever that looks like in different pieces, depending on what the assignment is. And so that does not require me to have my name in lights. That doesn't require, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm okay with being in the background because my purpose is to help someone else shine, right? So like, I'm often the secret weapon, the content ninja. You know, when I say I mean we, my team, because I have a fantastic group of 11 women of color who kick ass every single day. And together as a collective, we help people who have platforms. We help them and we question, what are they standing on? What are your morals, your values, your belief system? What are you fighting for, right? What conversations do you want to contribute to? Because you have the attention, so let's not waste it. And it's not about me, right? It's about community. It's about my client. It's about partnering with them to, you know, for the greater good.
I love that. I love that. I mean, I wish I could have that mentality. I'd still be a little bit like, man, I wish I could share.
No, like I'm good. Like honestly, I've been public speaking since 2012. Like I've been, you know, I've done a lot, seen a lot, accomplished a lot. Like I'm trying to phase out. I mean, I'm 33, y'all. Like I'm already thinking about like what the next, you know, few decades looks like, and it looks like a much quieter life than what I've been living.
Yeah. So before we get into the rapid fire round, I have one more question for you, which is one of my favorite poems is The Dash by Linda Ellis. If anyone has not read that, I highly suggest it. Well, what do you hope that your dash will represent one day, and what do you hope your legacy will be?
That I gave more than I took from this world.
That's
period.
Awesome.
That's it. Full stop.
That's awesome. All right, so we have a few rapid fire rounds. Then we're going to go to the Dory. So if anyone has a question, go to go/Pauleanna Reed.
I hope you guys have been enjoying this talk. I've been really enjoying like sharing. So this has been awesome.
So Pauleanna's guilty pleasure is?
I don't know if I have one.
All right. All right. That's okay. I mean, mine is bad reality television. That's pretty much what I watch. People are always like, Mallory, you like so deep. You must watch like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I haven't. I'm just watching like The Bachelorette and like bad reality television. Pauleanna's dream client would be?
My dream client would be Cardi B.
Oh, all right. If Pauleanna could have supported anyone in the world as their EA, who would it have been?
Sheryl Sandberg.
Oh, interesting. Pauleanna thinks every admin should do blank at least once in their career.
Go on a volunteer trip.
One thing still on Pauleanna's bucket list is?
To reach the $1 million mark in my company.
Oh,